Let's go learn. As I said, I'm Amy Dupree. I'm the director of partner success. I am a retired special educator, so you guys are all very near and dear to my heart. I was a director of special education in a district here in North Carolina, and so I have much love for everything that you guys do to meet our kids with the greatest needs. So thank you. We are going to look at our platform and get a quick overview. We're going to talk about some Edge instruction, and we're also going to talk about how to make sure your classes are set up for you today. And I'm going to show you how to do that live as well. So just a few things about what our platform is. First of all, our flagship products are our diagnostic assessments. They are called Adam and Dora. Adam is our math assessment, and that's the diagnostic math that you will give 3 times a year. Dora is our diagnostic reading assessment that you will also give 3 times a year, beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year. If you have students who are ready and are showing great growth that are,
the link.
We have a DOMA assessment, which is a pre-algebra. So if you have kiddos and you're in the high school range, and we'll talk about how to know if a student is ready for the DOMA assessment. But these assessments are adaptive, and what that means is they adapt and adjust to how students are progressing with the test. So if students are doing really well, it's going to give them more and more difficult questions. If students are struggling, it's going to move back and give them some easier questions. What it doesn't want to do is test kids to the point of frustration or unnecessarily. So it really seeks to hit them at their zone of proximal development so that the data you receive as output of what your students can do is reliable, it's actionable, and it is pinpoint targeted to exactly where they are with what they need. As soon as your students begin to answer questions in the diagnostics, you will get data that you will be able to view. And when they're done, you'll have some reports that are generated, and we're not going to talk about those reports today. We will in September. But when those reports are generated, you'll be able to then set some goals for your students using our special education tool, and you'll also be able to progress monitor throughout the year and support their IEP work. Additionally, when those initial diagnostics are completed, your students will be automatically enrolled in our Edge instructional pathway that'll be created for them. You will have to enroll your students, but their enrollment pathways are set for them, and they're based individually on exactly how your students answered questions in the assessment. The first step here is to take those diagnostic assessments, and those windows will open up for you soon. And then you'll have reports generated immediately, and we'll look at our IEP report specifically when we meet the next time to talk about scores and reports. And we'll have a customized, specially designed instruction class for your kiddos, which would be the Edge lesson platform. The formative assessments are there to help you target some skills along the way. And then we have a progress monitoring tool that you can also use to look specifically at individual strands for student growth. The reason that we have this personalized learning designed the way that it is, it's really to tighten up that instruction and assessment cycle. It's one thing to do things 3 times a year, beginning, middle, and end of the year, but it truly is that progress monitoring piece that drives that individualized instruction for students between those large assessment windows. And so my hope this year is to really support your district and getting into that formative assessment, because not only are you really being able to target where your students are individually and look at their growth that way, but that's helping you with some compliance pieces for creating your IEPs and being able to demonstrate that you've addressed students at their goals. So let's go learn. Kind of at its core is a platform that's for educators, that's been designed by educators. And our assessments are both criterion based and norm referenced. So we'd be able to look at data nationally, and we're also able to know that our students are capable exactly where they are, because they cannot fail up into a higher score. They can't guess their way into a high score. They have to actually answer questions at one level and then answer them at the next, and they have to work themselves into a high score. Conversely, if they are unable to answer at a particular grade level, it will work them backwards. And so it's really reliable data that lets you know that your kids are pinpoint targeted where they are with the skills that they can and can't do. And then it's personalized for them. Again, that Edge platform starts with skills that are their lowest gaps for skills. And so the lessons are based on their answers to their assessment. So if you notice that an assessment section at any point in time, and we'll talk more about this, is low, but you're sure that the student can do that, there is a way to go back and reassess that, and that will adjust their learning pathway. So every time you take a diagnostic, every time a student takes a formative assessment in the form of a quiz or a subtest, their EDGE lesson pathway will adjust to meet them where they are. So let's talk a little bit about what our DORA reading assessment is, the components of it. It has these 7 subtests: high frequency words, word recognition, phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, spelling, and reading comprehension. Again, it's based with adaptive logic. It's going to move how your students answer. It has graphic interfaces to meet the student at their age range. It gives you that immediate access to student data, and it's approximately 60 minutes. So if you know students who have multiple test sessions, you can very easily plan for that. You can test them over the course of a few days. If you start the test on a Monday, you can stop it, go back to it on Tuesday. It picks right up where the student left off. So you're easy to accommodate kiddos with those multiple test sessions. The components of it, the high frequency word assessment piece is words from kindergarten through the 3rd grade range. This is the only timed measure. Students have about 5 seconds to click on it. It won't move forward, but if they click after 5 seconds, it will count it as wrong. So they won't see that, but you'll know that that is part of how the score is determined. Is even if they can read the word and they click on it late, if it's not within that 5-second window, it'll be counted wrong. And the words are on the Fry word list. That's where the word list comes from. So the DORA phonics, it maxes out at late 4th grade, and it looks at real words and nonsense words, and it looks at those basic phonetic principles that we're all familiar with. Our phonemic awareness, that is a screener. So all of our scores will come in as grade level equivalents, except for the phonemic awareness. It comes in as a percentage. And the reason it doesn't come with a grade level score is because the assumption is these are skills that really precede that kindergarten, 1st grade level. And it opens up for all of your K2 students. However, it opens up for older students if they're really struggling in the phonics section of the assessment. So if you see a score for the phonemic awareness assessment for students who are 3rd grade or older, you'll know that they were really struggling in those earlier sections of the assessment. It's scored, though, very generically: good or poor or not tested. So good is if they had 50% or more of the screener answered correctly. Poor is less than 50%, and then NT would show up in the scoring platform, which we'll look at quickly, that will show you that they didn't need it if they're an older student. There's an oral vocabulary, and that looks at vocabulary for K-12, and it just looks at vocabulary across a wide range of disciplines. There is a spelling assessment, and again, this is K-12 spelling, and it is generative. It's the only test that requires the students to input the correct answer. So there's not words for them to choose from. To determine if it's spelled correctly, they actually have to generate the word. So sometimes these scores are a little bit lower than possibly where students actually are academically, because we have a lot of autocorrect. Students answer in text, which are abbreviated words. They do some kind of silly things on their phones if they have them. And the computer does a lot of spell check work for them as well. So sometimes getting the spelling scores up is difficult because our kids have a lot of other tools and a lot of other ways at their fingertips. And then the last piece for the Dora is the silent reading comprehension. It's first through 12th grade. It uses the Flesch-Kincaid leveling system, and it only provides expository text passages. And it has lots of contextual vocabulary in it, and then it has inferential questions and factual questions. So that is the structure of our door reading. And the next major assessment that we have is the ADAM, and that is the Adaptive Diagnostic Assessment in Mathematics. This assessment has these strands: numbers and operations, geometry, data analysis, measurement, and algebraic thinking. But within these strands are 44 subtests, and we'll look at how you can quickly take a glance and see what those subtests are. It is, again, fully aligned to Common Core standards, and it has a lot of critical problem-solving items in it as well. This test is a little bit longer. You might want to plan the first time students take it for about an hour and a half. So you really should plan for multiple test sessions with this one. Same thing, they can start and stop it. As the system gets to know the student, however, it will start with questions based on their interactions with the assessments. So as you give this test, and then by the time you get to the middle of the year, you will have given some formative assessments. So they will have had some subtests and quizzes along the way. And so the test will be able to more accurately kind of start where they are versus the little bit longer that it takes in the beginning. So the second time students take ADAM, it should not take them as long. Again, this is just a sample question of what the ADAM assessment looks like. And then we have the DOMA, the other part of the math side. So as students progress and are older kiddos, this is the algebra portion of it. And it's broken into two different tests. We have the pre-algebra assessment, and that's 14 constructs that are also have a little bit of pre-screening for reading, just to make sure that reading isn't a barrier for the students to answer the questions, because this assessment is not read aloud. The ADAM assessment is, so it's good that kiddos have some headphones on. But once we get to the pre-algebra and algebra, those assessments are not read aloud. And part of the pre-algebra is that students go back and look at some basic math skills and make sure that they are solid in those foundational skills. So if you are an 8th or 9th grade teacher and your students are still struggling at the ADAM at the not quite at the 6th or 7th grade range, then they don't need to take the DOMA. However, if your friends are pretty good at the ADAM at the 6th or 7th grade range, then they can take the DOMA. And then once you're successful with the DOMA, obviously the algebra. So again, this is just kind of going through what I just said. ADAM is best suited for those elementary and middle school friends. And then older kiddos who are facing some of those foundational math concepts. But then DOMA pre-algebra looks at those skills that are needed for Algebra 1. So it circles back into that basic math and then moving into DOMA algebra. So we're going to log in. If you have your computer, or if you're with a group of people, one of you can log in. But when you log into Let's Go Learn, your username is your school email address. If you aren't sure what your password is, you can see here on my screen, there is a password reset. So you can just click on that, reset your password, and then your school code. And I'm going to, so when you log in, your screen will look like this. Some things to note about this landing page for Let's Go Learn. The first thing you want to make sure is that this button here with the check mark is green. That just lets you know that everything's okay with our system. If it's ever yellow for any reason, that lets you know that you need to click on this detail button, because there should be a message from our support team with any network information that you might need to know. I've only seen this button turn yellow maybe twice in over 2 years. So this should always be green, really. The other thing is this video library. So anything that we talk about today will be here in this video library. When you click on it, it will take you to this landing page, and it'll say the training and PD site. So today we're going to talk about getting started basics. We're going to talk about Edge instruction basics. So anything I cover today will be under these two tabs. If you click on the Teacher Getting Started Basics, it's going to have some very short videos, literally 30 seconds to a minute maybe, that give you a refresher on the things that we talk about: adding a class, moving students, queuing assessments, which we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes, queuing some subtests or skills and concepts quizzes. And at the bottom of that page are slide decks that you might want to use with your students and let them know what to expect when they log into Let's Go Learn to take their first assessment. And this is really important because you want your kiddos to do the very best that they can. And sometimes assessments are not the funnest thing for students to do, and they just like to click for the sake of clicking to be done with it. So I encourage you to set them up for success by looking through these slide decks and helping them understand that their data that they input, the effort that they put, the scores that they generate are going to direct their learning pathway with Edge. So it's really important that they try their best to get the most accurate set of lessons available for themselves once they're completed the assessments. The other thing we're going to talk about today is Edge, and that is our instructional platform. When you click on this Edge Instruction Basics, there is an overview video for you here, and then there's also one for your students that you might want to share. And again, same thing, short videos that are just reminders. Also, in all of these little subsections here, we have some links underneath each video, and you can click on the link and it will take you to our knowledge base. So knowledge base is like Let's Go Learn's personal library for you, and it will have the videos again, but will also have additional links to some articles and other things that you may want to review related to whatever topic you've clicked on. Sometimes people like to click in here and just have something that's in their hand to hold. Other folks like the video. But just so you know, every video has a knowledge base article that's connected to it. And again, knowledge base is, if you can imagine it like a library, that's what it is. At the bottom of this Edge instruction page, one of the things I always encourage folks to do is to come down here to the very, very bottom, and there's a list of all of the Edge lessons and descriptions. So when you click on that, it gives you a little Excel workbook with the math lessons, and then another tab down here for the ELA lessons. And they're in order, kindergarten here, all the way down through the 8th grade, okay? So it will give you a list of the lessons, what they are, and their titles. All right, so again, that video library is here on the left-hand side when you log into the platform. The only other thing I want to point out in right now for the homepage is this support icon. If you ever have a technology-based issue, a blank screen, you have data that suddenly disappeared, you can click here and send a ticket in to our team. It's important that you include your class name, the student that you're referencing, and some details about what had happened, and even some screenshots if you need to, because there's always somebody on the other end who will answer your questions immediately if they're technology based. If they're platform based, as in just questions about how to interpret scores and reports or where do you find this particular tool, just reach out to me and I'll get back to you. But if it's in the immediate moment and you're trying to get your student moving with the Let's Go Learn platform and something's happened, please reach out on this support home, because this is that technology support and they have the ability to then look in the back. Oftentimes it's user errors and kids have clicked in crazy places, and they can kind of weave through that and see what's happening. Whereas I can't do that for you. So that is for tech issues. Across the top here are the tabs that you will be using. So we're going to look at class tab first. So if you click on the class tab, your class will come up for you. If you are a self-contained classroom teacher and you have a role that's attached to your name of students, your class should already be here. If you are a resource teacher, however, then you will have to create your classes because that you will have multiple classes throughout the day. So anybody who has just one class is a self-contained situation because you have Infinite Campus, I think, or Clever connected. Our system speaks to that system, and so it speaks every day and updates. So your students will automatically populate into your class when you have kids enroll and that sort of thing. But if you are that resource teacher, you're going to have to create your own classes. And the way that you do that is you come here to this button, add a new class, and it will pop up with the site that you're attached to as the teacher. And then you'll need to title your class. And I suggest that you put the year, so 25-26 third grade, or 25-26 fourth period, or 25-26 A block. However you refer to your classes, go ahead and set that up. And once you do, then you just click add class. So you give it a title, you add the class. And once you get the class, it'll pop up empty. And what you'll need to do then is come over here to manage, and then click on student roster. And then you can come into this search button and start typing in names and pulling them into your class. Very easy. So I will show you that again. Once you have add a class, you're going to title it 25-26 third block, click add. That's how you create the class. And then it's going to put you back here. You're going to come up to manage, student roster, and just pull your kids in as you need to. Once you have a class set up with your students, you will have these top line here. You'll have first name, last name, their profile. The profile is the information that gets pulled in from your student information system into Let's Go Learn. You should never have to go in there and edit it. It's got the date of birth, their name, their grade, their email. There isn't a reason really that I can think of that you would have to come in there and update that student. Then you have some internal note options here. So if you can think of this like a Post-it note for your students. So if I wanted to come in here and put a Post-it note for Abigail Anderson, I would click on new, and then I would title it, if I wanted to talk about her testing accommodations. And then maybe I wanted to say she didn't use her testing accommodations, or she only prefers this one or that one, whichever it is, then I can click save. And so if you can think about that as having Post-it notes for your student. So when you click on internal student notes, then here's a note that's testing. So I would go in there and I could read about her testing accommodations and how well she does or doesn't use them. The one thing to remember about Let's Go Learn is all of the data follows the student, not the teacher. So if kiddos are in if they transfer between schools, or if they change teachers, you can, or if you share a student and one of you happens to be a math resource teacher and one of you happens to be a reading resource teacher, you can pull the students into more than one class role. That's fine, because all of their data follows them. So if you create that note for yourself, it'll be able to be seen by other teachers who work with that student. So if at some point in time this note becomes irrelevant, all you have to do is just click delete and it goes away, right? Just like throwing the Post-it note away. But that's a pretty cool feature, specifically at the end of the year. If there's something you think that's pertinent that the next teacher needs to know about that student, it's always good to put a little Post-it note for that kiddo into their profile. You will also see their grade level, their date of birth, their ID number, and you'll be able to see their individual test queue. If you ever click on the begin button beside a student, that logs you into their account. If you go into their account and you start doing something with a lesson or with an assessment, that data gets saved as the student. So there's really never a reason for you to go into their account unless you're trying to help troubleshoot something for them on their end that might need to become then a ticket request to our support team for a technology issue. So anything you do here shows up as anything that the student has done. So you can see the individual student queues here. but you can also see the class queue here. So if I click on class queue, it's going to take me from this class tab to this test queue tab. So when I click on view class queue, my tab changes from class to test queue. Now that's the highlighted piece. All right, so back to class. If I want to see my whole class queue, it's going to jump me from the class tab to the test queue tab, like that. Or I could be from the home screen and just go to the test queue tab. If I just start at the test queue tab, it's going to show again my entire class, and it's going to allow me to manage the class queue, which is the same button as over here with the class tab, manage class queue. Once my students start taking these assessments, I can click on the test progress detail, and I'll be able to see the assessments that have been assigned to this particular student, and then the approximate completion. So if you want to look after your kids have started the assessment, so let's just say on Monday, you have assigned the Atom for your students. At the end of the class period, you have lots of students who aren't done. All you have to do is come to this test queue tab, click on test progress detail, and you'll be able to see about how much of the test they've completed. Lets you kind of plan for the next day, right? So if I want to assign everybody in the whole class an assessment, I come back over to manage class queue, and then it's going to bring up comprehensive diagnostics. When you look here, you will see that's where we have DOMA, the algebra, DOMA, the pre-algebra, Atom for math, and then the Dora ELA. These are the ones that you are concerned with. If you scroll down, you'll see the subtests, and then you'll see skills and concepts quizzes. These two areas, subtest, skills and concepts quizzes, become your formative assessment bucket. So anything that you want to test outside of these big beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year assessments are down here in these next two categories. But to start the year, we're concerned with these comprehensive diagnostics. So I'm going to back out of this again. I'm going to go to test queue. I'm going to go to manage my entire class queue. And I'm going to assign everybody in this class the Atom. I click on Atom and it's assigned. That's it. That's all you have to do. If I wanted to assign everybody the algebra, I'd click on DOMA and it pops up and there it is, and they're assigned. Now, let's say I accidentally clicked on the DOMA and decided I don't want to do that. I can come over here to this actions button and I can unqueue it. And if I do it, it just goes away. Okay, very easy. Now, if you have students who have started an assessment, but you decide, oh, I don't want them to do this, there's the terminate button here. And what that means is anybody who started an assessment and you terminate all of the progress they've made, all of the data that's been collected, it goes away. So just be sure that if students have started it, that you truly want to terminate it. All right. It's one thing to unqueue it when nobody has started it, but you're terminating it for students who have started it. And that's the difference. All right. So to start the year, these are the assessments most likely everybody's going to be doing, the Atom and the Dora. And again, you just come over to this class test queue and click on it and it populates for everybody. And then what you can see is test progress detail. Now you can see that everybody in your class, you can see the assessments that they've been assigned and if they've started them or not. So I'm going to go back into managing my class queue, and I can see that I have 16 students who are queued up for Dora. I'm going to click on Dora and queue that up. And now I have 15 students queued up for Dora. And then I can see that I have 16 students queued up for a subtest, and then one student for each of these subtests. And then I have a couple of students who are queued up for these tests down here. So you'd be able to see how many students are queued up for which assessment. And it's the same principle here. You could unqueue anything that you inadvertently queue up for students, and it just simply goes away. Now, if I'm back in my test queue and I'm on this test queue tab, you can see that you have add and edit for your individual students. And this matters when you want to start queuing up those formative assessments. Now we're not looking at our whole class, we're looking at our individual students. So let's say that Nikki didn't do so well on the comprehension part of the Dora. I looked at her comprehension and she scored at the kindergarten level, and I know full well that she can score at the 4th grade level. If I see a strong anomaly like that, I can come back and reassign that particular piece to the student. So I just type in comprehension and it pops up, and then it's going to ask me, because I'm looking at one student, do you want to override the grade level? And I say, well, I know she's in the 6th grade, but she reads about the 3rd grade level. So I want the test to start in that 3rd grade bucket of questions, and I'm going to queue it that way. All right. And so now I know that I have queued for Nikki the subtest in comprehension, because I noticed that she didn't do particularly well on that when she took the Dora at this grade level, and it's ready for her to go. So when I come back to my queue and I look at Nikki, I can see in test progress detail that she has the comprehension subtest queued up for her at this default grade, at this 3rd grade level. If it says default, it's defaulting to the grade level that they're in. So she's in the 6th grade, but I want her to at least start at the 3rd grade level on that comprehension subtest. So anytime you want to change the grade level for a student, you can do that individually. You cannot do it as a whole class, but you can go in individually and edit how a student's going to start the assessment if you think that their grade level is so far away from their grade level performance is really far away from their actual grade level. So if you know you have a 7th grade friend who really works at the 2nd grade, mathematically speaking, maybe you really just want the assessment to start at that grade level, and you could do that. And you can do it for the diagnostics, which is the Adam and the Dora, and you can do it for those subtests. You cannot do it for the skills and quizzes because those are already at a specific grade level. Does that make sense? You want me to say that again? You can queue up individual grade levels for students to start a comprehensive diagnostic or a subtest, but you can't for the skills and quizzes. So if I looked at my class queue, you can make these at individual grade levels by doing it kid by kid. You can make these at individual grade levels by doing it kid by kid if you want to. These here at the bottom, you cannot. So if you can think about a funnel, the comprehensive diagnostic is this broad scope of information. But then you have these subtests, which are a little more narrow. And then you have these skills and concepts quizzes, which are pretty granular. So at the beginning of the year, we just kind of want to see across this great expanse of information where our kids are. And then we can start looking at each of these subtests to say, oh, they're doing good at this section, but not in this section. So I want to dig a little deeper. And then when you're really getting into that instruction and you're grouping your kids where they are, you can come back and assign these skills and concepts quizzes. So it's kind of like saying, I'm going to look at reading, and now I'm going to look at phonics, and now I'm going to look at short vowels, right? Or here I'm going to look at number sense. Here I want to look at just addition and subtraction, but here I might want to look at two-digit addition. That's how that funnels. Okay, any questions at the moment about how to just simply create the class? You click manage, move your students in. You can click view your class test queue from here, or you can do it from test queue. to assign those big assessments. The last thing I want to show you about these large assessments is I know you're going to want to see your data pretty quickly. So when you click on scores and reports and you click on Active Pulse ELA and Active Pulse Math, it's going to bring up this. It's going to show you just this general overview of your students' data. And we're not going to dig heavy into these reports, but I do want you to know that it's going to give you this total score. So you can consider that a grade level equivalent. So that's like saying Abigail she's in the 7th grade. She's working at a 4th grade, 8-month. So late 4th grade. This student is in the 7th grade. He's working at this mid 5th grade level, mid-year 5th grade. 6th grade, mid 3rd grade, right? Then you can see the strands where the students are and what they've done mathematically speaking. But you can ask yourself, so what about numbers? What things is Abigail good at and where does she need some support? So you can come up here and click on numbers and operations and it will blow that out for you and show you specifically. So you can see all of these green numbers. If it's ever a green score, that means they have mastered that subtest or that skill. So green is mastery. Then you can look here and see these are all in this bold. If it's ever bold, that lets you know that they are a quarter of a year or more behind grade level expectations. If you see it in red, that lets you know that they were unable to answer the question at the lowest level of that particular subtest. So the easiest, most basic questions for ratios, she was not able to answer. And then if you see NT, that just means not tested. It means that they weren't doing well here, so the test just stopped. Again, it's adaptive and it doesn't want to test students unnecessarily. And if you need a reminder for that, there's a key down here at the bottom that explains exactly what I just said, what the colors mean. So green, max scores, bold black, a quarter of a year or more below grade level. Red is non-mastery at the lowest question set. And then anything that's just sort of regular black print, not bold, like these numbers here, means they're at grade level equivalent. They're on grade level. So this student is in the 5th grade, almost 5th grade. So they're right on target, right where they need to be, not a quarter of a year behind. So you will be able to, at a glance, look through these scores and kind of start making some decisions about where your students are. And that's with math. And the same thing happens over here with ELA. I can at a glance see where my students are. So maxed out high frequency words, maxed out with phonics. The student is a 7th grader. They're on grade level here with word recognition, but then we have these don't bold for a quarter of a year or more behind the way the math do, but you can still see this grade level equivalent. And then we see again this NT for phonemic awareness, meaning not tested. They weren't tested, they didn't need to be because they'd already done so well here. Now this student is in the 6th grade and this phonemic awareness assessment shouldn't have opened up, but it did because they were so poor here with phonics. All right, so again, just a real quick at a glance, you can see who's doing what. Now, if I'm looking at this particular student and I think, you know what, they do have some phonics skills. Michael DeSalis has phonics skills. I know he does. I think I need to retest this because I don't think it's an accurate reflection. I can come back to test queue. I can go find Michael. There he is. I can go individually to Michael's individual test queue, click on it, and I can come down here to this subtest and I can say phonics, click on it, and then it says, do you want to give it to him at his current grade level? Yes, I'm going to say 5th grade, and I'll queue that up. And then Michael's subtest for phonics is queued up at grade level 5. All right. Okay, let's jump back over here to some Edge and talk a minute about Edge. So once students move in to get their diagnostics done, then their Edge learning pathway is created for them. And that's one of the reasons I showed you, if you see some testing anomaly and you think a student needs to be retested in it, it's good to go ahead and do that as quick as possible, because that's going to determine the lessons that they get. So our Edge lessons, they're K-8. They're high interest, age appropriate. They have songs on animations and graphics, so it's really kind of gamified. It's a gamification learning. It kind of tries to hit some modalities with music and kind of pique their interest. It's prescriptive and it's personalized. It's over here in the instruction tab. So we just look at the home tab, we look at the class tab, we look at the test queue tab, and then the instruction tab is Edge V3. So once your students are done, you're going to go to that instruction tab, and then this green button is going to pop up for you after everybody's done. It's going to say enroll your class. Just click enroll and click on the subject area, either ELA or math, and enroll them. If you're a resource teacher for both ELA and math, you're going to enroll them twice. If you're just the resource for ELA, you're just going to click ELA. Very easy, and it just enrolls them. So students have levels of proficiency. Bronze is a score range of 75 to 89.9. Silver is a more narrow proficiency range. It's 90 to 94.9. And gold is also a narrow range of 95 to 100%. Some teachers want their students to just get to bronze and move down that lesson pathway. So you kind of need to think about this as you're working with your students with Edge and decide, is it really them moving forward on all of their lessons, or do you want them to do it over until they reach a higher level of proficiency, like gold? Some teachers only want their kids to go forward if they get to gold. And that means that you can do these lessons over as many times as they need to, which is that practice point, if they need to get to the gold. So if they need to do it 10 times, then they do. If a student attempts a lesson for 4 times and they don't reach this minimum 75%, it's just going to tell you skipped. And you'll be able to see in their lesson pathways if they have any skipped lessons. And that's just a note to you as the teacher that you may need to go back and kind of look more deeply at their data. Were they struggling with that particular concept? Do they just not like that particular lesson? Or do you need to sit down and do some reteaching with that kiddo? Just like the assessments, students can pause their Edge lessons. So if a student's in the middle of a lesson and a fire drill happens, or a class change happens, or something else is going on and they need to shift gears, they can stop and pause that lesson. And the way you pause the lesson is you use the back arrow to get out of it, and then it's going to pop up this icon and say, are you sure you want to exit? And you're going to click exit. Yes, I want to get out of it. And it'll save their work. But it will only hold it for 2 weeks. And the reason for that is nobody's going to remember past 2 weeks what they were doing, right? I don't remember 2 weeks ago what I was doing on a Wednesday, right? They're not going to remember that either. So you need to ensure that they back out of it. Now, if it's more than 2 weeks, it'll make them start all the way over. Students cannot have their information saved if they just shut their laptop or if they click the window and just X out of it. They need to back out of the lesson appropriately, which means using the back arrow and clicking exit. If they do the other two, just click out of the window or shut their computer, it's not going to save their progress and they'll have to start over. All right, so let's look at that in real time. So we've talked about our home screen, class, test queue. So now instruction, you can go to Edge V3. It looks like this. Here's that enroll class button that will be more prominent. This class has already been enrolled. A couple of things to note here about this landing page. You can see all of your kids here, and you can see that their courses are on and in green. That means that they're on and able to participate. If for some reason you have a student who just loves to do reading but hates math, and so they only are on Edge reading the whole time, you can come over here and just turn it off and force them to work on their math until you feel like they've caught up. And then if they're where you want them to be, click it back on. That's it. Okay? Very easy if you have a kid doing some overuse. And then this is just at a glance what they've done on any particular day and what they've done for a week. You can come over here to their information. So for ELA and for math, and you can click on info. You can look at their individual student details. You can look at their upcoming lessons and their certificates. So let's look at upcoming lessons. So I am looking at this particular student's, Abigail Anderson's upcoming math lessons. You can see she has a skip here. So she's attempted this lesson 4 times. And I might need to go back and look at multi-step word problems with her. Her next lesson is on volume of prisms. And I think she doesn't need to do that. I really need her to focus on some of these other skills. So I'm going to disable that. You can take, a lesson out for them. So I have disabled volume for her. It goes away. And then it's populated with another lesson that takes its place. So the next 25 lessons or so, 30, they're here for the student. If I ever decide that I didn't mean to take this out or she now needs to do this lesson, you can just enable it and it pops back in. So as a teacher, you have a little bit of autonomy about what's in your kiddo's lesson pathway. So you can go in and disable lessons and move them up to something more difficult if that's what you choose to do for your students. The other thing here is you can look at their individual usage details. So again, I'm looking at her scores for Abigail Anderson. You can filter this. So I'm going to look at it for the past year, and it's going to show you the number of minutes that she's played and did she complete the lesson or not. And I can sort by just date, meaning the date that she did it, the most recent work. Or I could sort it by the most unique lessons done. So where she hasn't repeated a lesson to try to get to a higher gold badge. And I could also look at just the ones that she's completed. So you have some filtering options up here at the top if you need to look at student usage. You could also look at usage for your entire class. So if I click on usage, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to show you the total time they've played. It's going to give you the total completed lessons, the total unique lessons, the total played lessons. These numbers can be very different. So every time a student moves along their lesson pathway to a new lesson, that's a unique lesson. So you may have 20 lessons here that they've tried that are unique, but they may have completed 40, meaning that they've gone back and done 20 repeats of lessons that they've opened up unique. So this number can be much higher than unique. They might like to just play a particular lesson, or maybe they're truly working at getting gold for all of their levels. So those numbers can be different. And this is just the total number that they've played all together. And again, you have some filtering options here to look at what students have done over time. Within this, you can also look at their certificates. So if you wanted to incentivize your students because you want to print some certificates out, it will collect that information and allow you to print that for them. You also have, the system will track for you some rankings for your student, and you can filter that as well. And you can look at the most gold badges that students have earned, the most lessons that they've completed, and the most new lessons that they've completed. Those are the data points that get tracked. And then lastly, up here at the top of this instruction page, you have a whiteboard. And the whiteboard gives you the scope and sequence of lessons for English language arts, and then at the bottom for math. So let's say you're a 5th grade teacher and you want to teach a lesson on polygons. You can preview this lesson and you can use it to introduce polygons to your students if you choose to. So you have some instructional flexibility with this as well. And then lastly, within this, So you have ways to look at your whole class and use it with your whole class. And again, you can look here individually with what your students are doing. You can also assign your students lessons. So if I come here to instruction and I can come down to assignments, and then I can come over here to create an assignment. Then my class pops up and it tells you right here, steps 1, 2, and 3. You got to add your students, you've got to choose your lessons, and you've got to name your assignment. So if I want to add my students, I can add them here. Now that I have the populated group of students that I want, I'm going to go to my next thing to choose lessons. I'm going to click the next button. I'm going to look at math. I'm going to look at fractions. And then it comes up with some fraction lessons. And so I really want to look at adding fractions with different denominators. It gives you a preview. You can look at the lesson to make sure this is the type of lesson, it's the right set of skills that you want them to work on. And if it is, you click on the lesson and then you've selected your lesson. So you've done this part. Now it's ready to name your assignment. So again, just click next. I want this to be homework. I want to give it a start and end date. So I'm going to give them a whole week to get the lesson done. And then you have to give them some instructions and click save. And then your lesson populates here and you can see that you have a homework assignment. You can come back and edit that lesson. You can change the due date. You can look at the usage. You can see all of the students who have been assigned that lesson and the progress that they've made in it and their most recent activity. You can even go so far as to look at the score they got, the minutes played, and when it's completed. So I think that's pretty cool as far as your control. So if you have assignments, and let's just say this fractions lesson here that we've assigned for these students, if it was in their learning pathway, it goes out of their learning pathway and becomes an assignment for you that you can take a grade on if you choose to, and their learning pathway gets imported a next lesson. So you'll never have a time when you've assigned a lesson and then they do their learning pathway and it's the same lesson and they go, oh, I've already done this. That won't happen. It'll just be replaced. It'll be taken out of their queue. So that is a really quick overview. While I am on this platform page, do I have any questions about how to set up a class, how to get students into it, how to queue up assessments, how to have a quick glance at scores, and then how to enroll students or make an assignment? I know that's kind of a lot of information, but those are the very first parts that will happen between now and the next time we meet.
If you are not sure what level to test your kiddos at, like, will the test self-correct at all if you're way off base?
Yeah, it will.
Okay.
So let's say you have that's a great question. Let's say you're a sixth grade teacher and you believe that the student is a second grade student. Remember, it's criterion based and it's going to be adaptive. So if you think that your sixth grade student is working at a second grade level, it's going to start asking them questions. But if they're answering them, it's going to move right up and keep going until it hits their ceiling. So if you're wrong, it doesn't matter. The test is going to adapt every time. Other questions? Anything else that I can show on this particular screen for you? It's a lot of information, I know. Just remember that you have the video library here that will kind of go back over anything about getting started or Edge.
Student who's like, they came to us, I think, from a different school, but it says they're a sixth grader and they're definitely not. They're a fifth grader. Is that something we would need to change through like tech support or?
So I would make sure that we pull that information through your student information system. So if you use Infinite Campus, Power School, Clever, that's where that information gets pulled from. So if they've been in the system and been retained, that might be a Clever glitch somehow, some way.
Amy, can you one more time talk about backing out? We had a lot of teachers reach out and say that it didn't save progress last year. And so can you just one more time talk about how to make sure kids do so it saves progress?
Yes. On the edge lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a arrow in the edge lesson here. It's a blue arrow that they just click to back out. And then it's going to prompt you with exit. Are you sure you want to exit the lesson? And so when you exit, it saves it. But you have to back out through the blue arrow and then hit the prompt. If you just shut your laptop or X out of the window, it won't save it. And that feature did not fully it was launched last year about December or January. So if you had people who were frustrated by that prior to that, it didn't do it, but it did starting in January. All right, so if you have any other questions, my email is adupree@letsgolearn.com, and that is my phone number, 828-340-2080. Please feel free to call me. Please feel free to send me an email, and I will get back to you and support you. I'm looking forward to it. I will be there in person with you guys, I believe, in 2 weeks, I think is the time.